Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wishbone Football. I am Chad, and welcome into episode 1.13, the Sorsby Saga. I wanted to take some time to kind of dive into what has easily been the story of the offseason. And I'm not saying that lightly because I understand that different people can get more psyched up or hyped up about different stories that come out with respect to college football or the NFL, even for that matter, too. It's why we love this stupid sport, honestly. And for those of you listening who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to try and give sort of an in-depth history on Brendan Sorsby before we kind of dive into everything that has sort of taken place over the last, I'll say, 10 days, 2 weeks sort of thing since the decision has come out. So let's get into it here. So for those of you who don't know, Brendan Sorsby is the quarterback at the university, Texas Tech University. He admittedly came out and said that he was gambling on college football games that he was involved in, both at Indiana and at Cincinnati, before he ultimately hit that transfer portal and accepted what is widely reported as a $5 million NIL deal to go to Texas Tech. So the Brendan Sorsby and the NCAA kind of butt heads, ultimately causing it to go to court, where the District Court of Lubbock County, Texas, on June the 8th, granted Brendan Sorsby an injunction, essentially granting him the win to continue to play college football. And kind of crazy, right? With everything going on with gambling, this is not what college football needs. We do not need to have players openly gambling on games with everything that's going on, with the direction that college football is heading. It's not what was going to be for the best. So the reason all of this kind of transpired is because Brendan Sorsby came out, admitted this publicly, which was a good job by him. And Texas Tech ultimately said that they are going to do a self-imposed 2-game suspension for Brendan Sorsby. And shit got crazy. Every corner of college football was calling for Brendan Sorsby's head. And rightfully so. This is Pete Rose kind of stuff. Like, there is one rule, and you do not gamble on your own games. As simple as that. It is that cut and dry. This should not even have been a conversation that took place. But when you get the right judge who might have went to law school at Texas Tech, things can happen. You're going your own way. So I'm going to try and go in chronological order the best that I can on this information. So, Texas Tech Director of Athletics, Kirby Hocutt, came out, made a statement. We really do love our statements here on the show, don't we? We got deep into it a couple of weeks ago. Statement from Director of Athletics, Kirby Hocutt. As we have said before, we do not believe that the circumstances of Brendan's case warranted permanent ineligibility. As he returns to our football program, we remain committed to supporting Brendan's recovery and ensuring his compliance with the court's order, comprehensive support structure, including clinical care, monitoring, and compliance checks, will remain fully in place for the duration of Brendan's time as a student of at Texas Tech. End quote. So this is where things started to really get sideways with respect to how everyone was feeling. This statement that I just read out to you, Texas Tech Red Raiders athletic department tweeted this out at 12:36 p.m. June 8th. Since then, it has been seen by 1.7 million people, and it's been mocked every which way since, and rightfully so. Texas Tech made a stance with that, saying that, it's really not that bad. Yeah, he gambled on his own games, but some of them he didn't start. And that is just comical to me, because that should never be taking place. Ever, ever, ever. Gambling on even your sports. How about that? Say this doesn't get blown up like it does. Brendan Sorsby keeps quiet, starts gambling, and he's betting on Ohio State and Texas week 2 of the college football season this year. Like, that's a problem in itself. I don't want to overstate that it's not that he was gambling on just his own games, but it's also college football in general. Like, that is a huge no-no. Especially in any major sports facility, that is a huge no. And we know that. And I can't believe that we've had to go this far to defend your quarterback. I understand wanting to defend, but defend him if he gets a reckless driving charge like they do up there in Georgia. Not when he's gambling on his own goddamn games. That is completely different. This is totally offside. So, fast forward 2 days. Now we're June 10th. Kirby Hocutt, Director of Athletics, Texas Tech University. We have another statement. I've watched the reaction to Monday's court ruling with great respect for my colleagues across college athletics. Many of them are people I admire, but I also owe it to Texas Tech and, frankly, to the truth, to offer a few facts that seem to be getting lost in the noise. Brendan Sorsby has not played a single down of football as a Red Raider. He will miss the first 2 games of the 2026 season under the terms of his court's ruling. What happens after that will depend in no small part on how his recovery continues to progress. We're taking it one day at a time as he is. We'll evaluate his recovery, compliance, and readiness as we go. We are watching closely. We are deeply committed to his progress and well being, and we are not operating on blind faith. We are operating on a comprehensive clinical and compliance structure that we have committed to before the court ruled in Brendan's lawsuit against the NCAA, and that Brendan committed to as a condition of his return to our football program. Texas Tech is not a party to Brendan's lawsuit. We did not file it. We did not fund it. A young man in treatment for clinically diagnosed addiction exercised his legal right to seek a remedy in court, and a judge agreed with him. Our role has been to support his recovery, not to engineer his eligibility. I've heard the word integrity used a great deal in the last 48 hours. As someone who has dedicated his career to college sports, I too believe integrity is central to our industry's success. I also think integrity applies on more than one front. The integrity of sport matters. So does the integrity of how we treat a 22-year-old who sought help, entered residential treatment, and is working every day towards recovery. Those two things I have to be in conflict. I have two sons, including one who has recently graduated from Texas Tech and played football. Throughout this process, I've kept asking myself, how would I approach this situation if this was my own son? Let me be direct about what Texas Tech's position actually is. We are glad Brendan is still a part of our community because that is where he can extend himself the best possible support in his ongoing recovery. Clinical care, device monitoring, financial oversight, outpatient therapy, that infrastructure exists because we have to take our responsibility to this young man seriously. We spent Monday after the judge's ruling getting those systems stood up for him, not thinking about the X's and O's, putting him out of a structured environment away from his team and his support system does not protect anyone. It might be a cleaner headline, but it wouldn't be the right one. And it wouldn't be true to the institutional values that guide us every day. To my colleagues, I understand the frustration. This situation is hard, it is new, and there is no perfect answer. The system we're operating within is binary, and the situation is not. But the situation is not. We are open to ongoing conversations about how to best handle these issues as an industry going forward. We will continue to be transparent in our decision making. Most importantly, we will continue doing what we have always done, put our students first. I'm sorry, I needed a drink there. That was a lot to take in. It was integrity was thrown around. And that's really the word that I want to play with coming out of statement number 2 in 48 hours from the Texas Tech director of athletics. And integrity can mean a lot to different people, as Kirby Hocutt mentions in them. But what we can't rely on is the integrity of how Brendan Sorsby is going to carry himself throughout his football season. Sure, you guys are monitoring his device. That's wonderful. Are you searching his apartment for other phones that he now has figured out that he just needs a bedding burner? No, you're not. And that's where the integrity of the game of football comes into play for me. Because what if Brendan Sorsby has a bet on himself? Week 1, right? You're playing a non-conference game. No big deal. It's week 1. No one expects you to be a perfect thrower, right? Well, maybe it's because you had yourself only at under 22 and a half completions. And your OC just called a pass play and you have 22 completions. And you've got and so you're throwing another one. But like you wouldn't win your bet then. Right? Like am I painting a good enough picture for this? Because like week one, Texas Tech is playing Abilene Christian, and then at Oregon State week two. And no disrespect to them, but like the reason you were willing to take a self-imposed penalty was because these are your non-conference games. Of course, you're willing to bench him during those two. It was the same thing with the sign stealing scandal at Michigan. Michigan wanted to impose um, its own penalty. I think they were willing to go to 4 weeks for Harbaugh. And like the reason you do that is because those are the games that as a power school, as a P4 school, you should not be coaching a whole lot during those games. And that's why Texas Tech wanted to get away with a fast one here. They wanted to come out and say, yeah, 2 weeks. Oh, darn. He can't play Abilene Christian and Oregon State, but he's right back for Sam Houston. So it's interesting to say the least, I will say, because the integrity that Brendan Sorsby had is now gone from this, in all honesty, because you can't come back from this. You can't be like, oh yeah, we had a good game. We just lost. And maybe you had a few $1,000s on your throwing prop. Or even it doesn't even have to be that a crazy stat like that. Maybe you have yourself as under 1.5 sacks. And you took the bet. But then you don't have any sacks. So maybe you take one, you make it look good. And that's really where college football was coming. And the egregiousness of this for Texas Tech to just sort of gloss over. Like, yeah, he made a mistake. He's going through help. He's getting help. And that's wonderful. There is nothing more than I will say about someone seeking help that needs it. Good on you. You need to do that for whatever it is. I like to live that you need to have your mind right and you taken care of before you start worrying about anything else, especially football. And so I can't stress enough that I am on Brendan Sorsby's side for that. He came out, he had admitted he had an addiction. He was willing to get help, and seems to be going through with that. So that's where I will give some kudos to Brendan Sorsby through all of this. The part that I can't get to though is the integrity piece of the game. Because at any given moment we could be questioning ourselves as to, was that a mispass, or did he just throw it over him 10 yards. And it's those kind of things, especially being a quarterback, because I don't want to make the comparison to another position player, but you are in control of the game as a quarterback. You are in control of your offense, and you are what makes that offense tick for the most part. There are issues with him being a quarterback. So, moving forward here chronologically, there were a few conferences, and there are some sort of funny business that kind of came out in the days after. Specifically, I'll mention Georgia and Nebraska here. So their athletic departments have instructed sports coaches not to schedule Texas Tech following Brendan Sorsby eligibility ruling. And it might seem like it's harsh, but I understand it, because this is someone that should not be playing college football. And then you've got, in the matter of 48 hours, you've got an athletic director coming out saying, don't worry, everything's fine. But it's not. You might be glazing over what took place, but like, you cannot be doing that. This is Pete Rose. Like I said before, this is Pete Rose type stuff. You are gambling on your own football games. That is not okay. One thing I want to mention here before we go any further is a Texas Attorney General. His name's Ken Paxton. He had sent a letter to the Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark. And he basically come out and said, should the Big 12 seek to sanction Texas Tech for acting consistent with the order, Texas Tech will pursue all legal avenues to protect its interests and those of Texas Tech student athletes. Like everyone got in on this pissing match that was taking place. Like I can one up you. This is what I'm going to do. And it just continues to blow my mind what is going on. Now, over the course, I will say, of 2 weeks, small tidbits of information slowly rolled out, more and more. The story just kind of kept building. And the thing that has been overlooked is that Brendan Sorsby is believed to have been committing federal charges as well, because he was gambling on his own games, and he was in states in which sports betting was not allowed. And so we started to get details come out that he had a proxy in a different state that was basically making his bets for him. As you guys know, I live here in in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And I know for a fact that in New York State, you cannot be betting on New York games, New York schools. So, like, that's what I compare that to, is that are we to the point now where Brendan Sorsby is being brought up on wire fraud charges? Because that's technically what he has done in this. He has moved money around the states for illicit reasons, which illegal gambling has got to be one of them. And I think that's one thing that I don't think has truly been talked about enough. And I don't know if it will. I mean, I think we're beyond the point of this getting bigger. I don't want to say it won't, but we'll see when we get to the ultimate end of where we ended up. So, moving forward chronologically, the Big 12 on June the 15th, the Big 12 has filed a complaint in federal court in Dallas for a declaratory judgment, which would effectively give the league the ability to enforce its bylaws. This comes in response to the Texas Attorney General's letter last week. This would empower the Big 12 to have autonomy to make a decision on the Brendan Sorsby case. So I think you can kind of see where we begin to roll up here, is that the Big 12 understands what's going on here. And that is fueling more fire on when you have a conference that needs to step in and do something. But we're not done there. We are certainly not done yet. The NCAA president, Charlie Baker, came out and sort of had a bit of a statement on what was going on. Obviously, here we go. Here's the quote: "The Sorsby decision was never about only one student athlete. We are already seeing downhill effects in other eligibility cases in which state courts are allowing student athletes to circumvent long-standing eligibility rules, citing Sorsby outcome as part of the court's precedent. Another example of why we need Congress to pass the Protect College Sports Act, authorizing the association to apply common sense eligibility rules consistently for all student athletes and schools, regardless of the state or local court system." And this is interesting because it does sort of show that we are at a precipice where we need some sort of mandation as to how can we continue to move forward here, and who ultimately is going to get hurt in the process. Because I think this is just going to be, the timing is everything. So we have Brendan Sorsby while they're rolling out the SCORE Act, and Maybe it was timing. Maybe it was rolled out that way in the event that maybe Congress needed a little nudge to get this moving in the right direction. And what better than a national news story like Brendan Sorsby gambling on his own football games? So we are moving on this story. On June the 15th, the University of Michigan has canceled a scheduled volleyball match against Texas Tech, and University of Michigan plans to hold further discussions with its athletic staff on prohibiting contests against the Red Raiders, similar to Nebraska and Georgia, which we had already talked about. And that's kind of how quickly this kind of took off, is that it came and went so quickly, and it was just gone. That because of the outroar, everyone was just dying to impose sanctions on Texas Tech. It really was incredible to see. You always talk about the community of which college football is, and really that's when you come to life. Because Texas Tech, their fans were protecting Brendan Sorsby. Everybody kept saying, "What if this was Arch Manning?" And that was an excellent question that I got on Twitter. Is, would you feel the same way if Arch Manning was caught gambling on his own games? And I am here to tell you right now that I would be ready to kick Arch Manning out of Texas right now if that was the case. Because we need to be bigger than this. We need to be a better society than allowing something that is clearly offside. There's no other way to say that, is that this is what needs to take place. And ultimately getting Sorsby out of college football is where we ended up. It was announced yesterday that Brendan Sorsby attorneys have filed a voluntary motion to dismiss the case in Texas court, stating that Texas Tech informed him on Monday that he could not play for the Red Raiders this season. So there we are. That's where we end up. Texas Tech ultimately came to the correct decision. Whether they did, or if they had enough boosters, raise shit, but they ultimately Monday night informed Brendan Sorsby that he was no longer going to be a part of the Texas Tech Red Raiders football team. And so then the next step on all of this was that he needed to file a motion in court to withdraw his claim to continue to play. And he did that. So now fast forward a few more days. I mean, I know I just say yesterday he announced he was withdrawing, but there is already tons and tons of buzz about the supplemental draft, because he could be one of the people, one of the players that make this interesting. I mean, there hasn't been a need for a supplemental draft in a couple of years now. And I do believe that there is going to be a team that will take a shot at him. get him into their facility, get him to watch and train under a starting quarterback, and maybe give him a shot next year in the 2027 season. I do think that's where we are heading, is that he will ultimately be given a second chance with an NFL team after a lot of interviews and questions. I do think the NFL is going to give him a second chance, ultimately, Brendan Sorsby. So that wraps up things here for me tonight. I am recording this June 18th, and I don't want to say for sure yet, but I think I am going to be taking a bit of a break. We are doing some family vacationing starting next week and into the Canada Day and the 4th of July. So I don't know if I will be able to put out an episode next week. I'd like to, because if I do ultimately get a show out next week, I would probably take 2 weeks off after that to return mid-July. But that is up in the air. But I didn't want to let the Brendan Sorsby story go too long, especially since it's wrapped up now. And now we can kind of start looking at it from the NFL lens of, does this make sense? And ultimately, are we going to get to a point where the NFL is holding a supplemental draft, possibly over teams? I think that'd be cool to watch. So, without any further ado, I want to thank everyone for reaching out, giving me a listen, giving me a follow. Remember, you can find me on Twitter at WishboneFB, and I'm also on Instagram at WishboneChad. You can follow along for some fun summer activities with children over the next couple of months here before we ultimately get back into football. So, again, thank you, everyone. This is episode 1.13. I am Chad, and this is Wishbone Football. Thank you.